Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. My name is Nate. I also go by Hockey Boy Nate. Today, we are going to be talking about the potential threat of multiple tropical systems coming soon in the Gulf of Mexico. But before we get started, I'm going to ask that you all take the time to please leave a like on this video, subscribe if you're new, turn on notifications to stay up to date with all of my content, share this with friends and family and on social media, especially people around the Gulf of Mexico, because the potential for tropical systems is possible. I also have timestamps in the video discussing specific parts as to, say more or less timings or the conditions and stuff like that. And so if you guys want to scroll through that, you guys can. I have links to those timestamps in the description as well as in chapters. So I'll be talking about, obviously, the tropical update with what all is happening in the Atlantic, but I'll also be talking about the potential for some severe weather here today across portions of eastern Kansas, southeastern Nebraska, northern parts of Oklahoma, and even western parts of Missouri. And then I will briefly touch up on these marginal risks here in New Mexico and Colorado, but I don't really touch up on them too quickly. I just show the outlook again, so that's really it. But first things first, severe weather outlook here. Enhanced risk has been issued for eastern portions of Kansas. That is a 3 out of 5 on the severe weather scale. And so if you live here near portions of Topeka, Lawrence, even further south, maybe near Wichita, you guys could potentially get some strong damaging winds with that. Speaking of the parameters, we do have a 15% chance for hail. 5% is indicated in brown, 15 indicated in yellow. So whatever probability you have, that is your chance of seeing 1-inch size hail or larger within a 25-mile radius. If we move on to our wind outlook here, we have our 5 indicated in brown, 15 in yellow, as I said, but then you also have that additional 30% chance for damaging winds. That is the reason why there is the 3 out of 5 on the severe weather scale here today. And so whatever probability you have, that is your chance of seeing 58-mile-per-hour wind gusts or greater. We had a massive windstorm yesterday, a derecho as most people call it, where we had 93-mile-per-hour winds with it at peak, and we had multiple reports of 80-mile-per-hour winds, even an extra 90-mile-per-hour wind gusts reported over with that. So this is just basically the leftovers of all that has continued to surge a bit further south. The good news about this is that there is no tornado risk for the most part, or at least it's below 2%. It may not be a 0% chance, more or less, so you might have a small chance, but it definitely isn't enough to warrant its own probability according to the Storm Prediction Center. Now, if we take a look at the models here, this is the model guidance, the simulated reflectivity for the models here. If you want to take a look at the time, look up to the top right-hand corner. That's where you'll typically find all your information throughout any sort of stuff that I post on my videos. And so if we take a look here at about 11 a.m. Central Daylight Time, you can see these thunderstorms are actually starting to surge on through, and they actually have warranted a severe thunderstorm watch within that general vicinity as of the past 30 minutes of me recording this video. And so these storms are really going to be pushing on through, creating a lot of damaging winds, and they'll even start to pass through Lincoln, even further south into the general vicinity of Topeka and Kansas City. And by the late afternoons and early evening, you guys could potentially see your severe weather there in northeastern portions of Kansas, northwestern portions of Missouri. And as this continues to move about, this will continue to basically enlarge itself, but it won't be as intense as it was up to the north. And so it'll just be this strong damaging wind threat with not as much hail towards the latter stages of the evening, heading off into Oklahoma and even Arkansas, and even places around Joplin. They could potentially be seeing some damaging wind gusts in the latter stages of the evening. High temperatures here. These are the high temperatures for the rest of the United States for people who may not be impacted by that severe weather risk. I do want to make a couple notes here. First off, triple digits in the south and even to the southwest. Very dry for the most part here. It's actually been really dry here in the southwest as well. I mean, massive stages of drought, major stages of drought, I should say. They need rain, seriously. And so we're kind of hoping for the monsoon to come here soon, but as of right now, it doesn't seem like there's going to be too much relief for you all in regards to the drought. So I hope you guys make it out. I hope you guys get water, the necessities for you all, because I'm praying for you. You guys are really getting a lot of dry air, a lot of drought, and that's not really helpful for the environment around your areas. Pretty cool in the northwest and the northeast here. They're currently experiencing a lot of scattered showers and thunderstorms for the most part, or at least just some cooler temperatures. I can speak for the northeast when I say that. The northwest, maybe not as much showers and thunderstorms. It might just be more cool air coming in. But for the northeast, you guys are definitely experiencing a lot of showers and thunderstorms. The potential for some flooding is here. We are, or at least where I live here in the Northeast, we are under a flash flood watch. We've had consistent rain for quite some time, and the potential for flooding is possible. And that's definitely one of those things where if you see a flooded roadway, turn around, don't drown. Don't drive into flooded roadways because they could appear a lot shallower than they actually are. And that's how people get stuck in those flooded roadways that you see on TV. There should be a little bit of relief for people who are in the Deep South. We've had a lot of flooding here in the Deep South, especially across portions of Mississippi, Arkansas, Louisiana. There's been so much rain across most of those areas. Not too much of a relief, but it's still going to be warm. It's going to be muggy, and it still is going to be pretty uncomfortable. So no relief for you guys anticipated anytime soon. And then Florida is going to Florida as usual, 90s across the board. And so people in the Sunshine State will most likely continue to see those typical beach weather conditions. Now here's the day 2 outlook, a 1 out of 5 on the severe weather scale here, indicated in this dark green marginal risk. Not a huge risk for severe weather, and so not really much to talk about. This light green is just a general thunderstorm risk for people who are curious. So it's, it's almost like as if it's a 0 out of 5 on the severe weather scale, but it really isn't. It's a non-zero chance for severe storms, but it's more or less closely tied to a thunderstorm risk rather than a severe risk, if you know what I mean. Here's the day 3 outlook here. Day 3 outlook is a marginal risk right over the same exact areas, more or less. It actually includes a little bit of the western panhandle of Oklahoma and northern panhandle of Texas. And so they do join the fray a little bit, but still, same areas get the same exact thing. Thunderstorms, maybe possible severe storms throughout some of these areas. Now, let's get into the thing that we all want to know and talk about here, and that is the tropical update, all right? The potential for some tropical systems to actually head into the Gulf of Mexico and potentially impact the United States. Now, as of right now, the National Hurricane Center has actually issued a disturbance area here for portions of the Gulf of Mexico here, the southern parts of the Gulf of Mexico. Now, it does have a 0% chance of formation over the next 2 days, but it does have a 20% chance of formation over the next 5 days. That's what the 0 asterisk means, and the 20 asterisk means. On the left side, it'll mean 2 days. Right side, it will mean 5 days. And so there is a disturbance that the National Hurricane Center has acknowledged where there could be the potential for some formation here within the next 5 days. But the interesting thing about this is that it doesn't just form out of thin air. It actually forms from a tropical system that comes from the Pacific. And we do have 2 tropical systems here in the Pacific that are indeed something that we have to monitor. One higher than another. As you can see, we have 2 invests here. Invest 92E, which has a 30% chance of formation over the next 2 days, and a 40% chance of formation over the next 5 days. And then you also have Invest 93E, which is going to be the system that we're going to have to watch to cross over into the Atlantic. A 40% chance of formation over the next 2 days and a 50% chance of formation over the next 5 days. So definitely something to watch out for that. Now we're going to talk about 92E here first, mainly because this one's going to be the one that's not really going to impact land as much, so we're just going to get this one out of the way more or less. But this thing surprisingly already has some rotation within it. You can see the clouds and how they start to spin about. They have this kind of counterclockwise spin about them. I'll actually change the color here for you all. to make it a little bit better, here we go. We'll go light blue. So you can see it already has this counterclockwise spin about it, the general rotation in the atmosphere, most likely mid-level rotation here. The ventilation is not bad. You can see these little bands here off the side of the tropical system, even a little bit of an outflow boundary on the outside of it. So this thing does seem to be tropical, and we might be seeing a tropical system off of this relatively soon. So ventilation of it is pretty good. Doesn't seem to be getting a lot of wind shear impacted by this. And so it does seem to be in somewhat favorable conditions to do so, but the convection is kind of veered off a little bit. You can see these kind of grays and blacks and even whites in some spots. That is basically some deeper convection, some stronger thunderstorms. And specifically what we're looking at right now, I guess I should have said in the beginning, is that we're looking at the infrared satellite for this. And why we would use infrared satellite for hurricanes or tropical systems in general is because the higher thunderstorms go up into the atmosphere, the colder it typically gets. Same thing for when you're traveling up on mountains. And so if we use infrared satellite, we'll be able to see the tops of those clouds and determine the temperature based off of it and the heights of those clouds. And typically the higher the clouds there are, the higher the thunderstorms they typically are, the stronger the convection typically is, which convection is just a fancy word for thunderstorm activity. So if you have deep convection, you typically have higher clouds, higher thunderstorms, which typically means stronger tropical systems. So that's exactly what we're seeing. We're seeing a lot of this deep convection here within most of these areas. It's not at any point organized at the moment, but we do have a little bit of that general spin in the atmosphere just by looking at these kind of lower base clouds. Just look at these little white and gray clouds a little bit and how they kind of react and spin about. Except for these this is just more or less ventilation that is from the tops of the thunderstorm over there. But we'll play it again, show you all what I mean. You can see how these gray clouds have this general spin about them. It's not anything consolidated, but you do have something here. Now we're going to be taking a look at the model guidance, the spaghetti models more or less. And the interesting thing about this is that most of the spaghetti models actually have no idea where this thing is going at all. The one thing that I can say for certain is that they do steer it away from the coast of Mexico. So Baja California areas and the southern portions of Mexico, they do have some tracks that head over into that general vicinity, but you also have tracks that go north. You have some tracks that go west. They basically go all over the place. And so there's a lot of inconsistency in regards to where this tropical system actually heads off to. But for the most part, it stays away from the coast, according to the GEFS. And even some of these other models, the multi-spaghetti models, a lot of these other different models, more or less, take this all over the place. It goes north, it goes west. There is one that goes east, but most of the models actually say that this thing continues to head off west, which I would have to agree with. Either west or northwest is more or less where I am anticipating this to go. And so not really a huge threat from Invest 92E, but still something to look at that is really interesting. Now let's take a look at, this is supposed to be 93E, but this is not updated correctly, so we'll just scratch that out a little bit. But this is 93E right here, what we are seeing off of this. Let's actually back up a little bit. We'll take a look at the satellite a little bit more. And you can see a lot of deep convection there, very close to the coastline. You can see some of those purples. There's pinks and purples, which actually indicate that the temperatures at that specific height actually reaches up to -80, even -90 degrees Celsius. And that is some very, very cold cloud tops. Very deep convection with a lot of overshooting tops there, which can indicate a very strong thunderstorm activity. And this is what we have to watch out for some tropical systems to form off of this, is that whenever we have this deep convection, things typically start to converge, maybe even start to spin. And that's just the beginning of more or less the genesis of tropical systems, more or less. Now, if we take a look at the spaghetti models with this one is a lot more interesting. First off, just by taking a look at these blue, black, and purple lines, this more or less is the control or the average as to the tracks of this tropical system. So the GEFS is anticipating this to form and head off to the north and east. So it's actually expected to head off towards Mexico. But the interesting thing about this is that you have a couple of these ensemble models, specifically two, that actually say that this thing will fully cross into areas near or at the Gulf of Mexico and actually continue to move on forward towards the United States. So that's one thing that I do want to mention here for some of these areas, that the potential for this tropical system to head off into the United States, become one of the tropical systems that I was talking about in the beginning of my video, is possible. It is very possible for this situation, this given situation. So really something we're going to have to watch out for. Another thing to note is that there's also a couple other models that say that this will continue to ride up the coast of Mexico. We're hoping that to be the case. And even some stuff from the Canadian model here. This is the CMC spaghetti model here. You can see that a couple of these ensembles actually say that it will ride up the coast in that instance. But then there's a couple other ones that also say that it will most likely head into Mexico and potentially cross into the Gulf of Mexico. And even this one, look at this. This one goes all the way about and heads over into the United States. So definitely something that we're really going to have to watch out for. A lot of these different model runs that are basically they're all from the same model. It's just these different runs, these different trials that they have, and they continue to show different possibilities for this tropical system, or different tracks for this tropical system to take. And just by using that, we'll be able to determine as to whether or not places like the United States could be impacted. And so, really something that we're going to have to look at. And another thing to notice is that here's the multi-spaghetti models again, a bunch of these other spaghetti models that are saying that this track will most likely head into Mexico. You can see a lot of these models originally start out here, and they kind of fan out for the most part towards the north and east into the general vicinity of Mexico. And so really something to keep in mind with all this. I know there's this one spaghetti model who goes off to the side, but most of the models are indicating that this will head off into Mexico and potentially even cross into the Gulf of Mexico. Now, we're going to take a look at the conditions for this, the in-depth analysis sorts of where this tropical system is basically residing at. And first things first, we're going to want to look at the sea surface temperatures. My goodness, I'm stuttering over all of my words today. That's what I get for live streaming for 9.5 hours last night, but oh well, weather is weather. We can take a look here, and we can see the sea surface temperatures for the most part. Now, you typically want at least the yellows, other known as 26 degrees Celsius. That'd be about, what, mid-70s in Fahrenheit, something like that. And so, maybe even 80s. I think it's around the 80s, actually. So mid to upper 70s, even into the 80s. That's the temperatures that you want of your sea surface temperatures to really consider tropical systems. And there's even some of this where in the Pacific, you actually get into the 30s in Celsius, even 31 degrees Celsius, which is getting closer to 90 degrees, actually is above 90 degrees with your sea surface temperatures there. So really something to kind of watch out for. Very warm and hot temperatures, moist temperatures for tropical systems to potentially form off of this. And with warm air rising, cold air sinking, you get more thunderstorms to form off of this, and the greater displacement between the two can indicate stronger convection, stronger thunderstorms, and the potential for some stronger tropical systems. And if we actually take a look at the sea surface temperatures over in the Gulf of Mexico, you can even see they're even into 29, even 30 degrees Celsius over there too. So almost 90-degree temperatures over there as well. Definitely something to watch out for, especially since that is a favorable environment from a sea surface temperature perspective for tropical systems to be able to form and even sustain, maybe even intensify further about. Something we're going to have to monitor in the upcoming days. Now, if we take a look at the anomalies here, we can see the oranges and reds are above average temperatures, blues are below average temperatures. We have a lot of above average temperatures here across portions of the eastern Pacific, even into the Gulf of Mexico. We have a couple above average temperatures here, and upwards of a half a degree to a degree above average temperatures in Celsius. So that would be about 2 to 4 degrees above average temperatures in Fahrenheit. And yeah, you definitely have some warm sea surface temperatures here for thunderstorms to be able to form or sustain. And so from a sea surface temperatures perspective, this definitely looks conducive for tropical systems. Now, from a wind shear perspective, wind shear basically kills tropical system formation, if you will. If not, if a tropical system does form, it basically moves the general thunderstorms away from the center area of low pressure. So in this case, unlike severe weather, tropical systems actually dislike wind shear. And in order for your tropical systems to actually intensify further, you need there not to be a whole lot of wind shear for thunderstorms to be basically taken away from the center of low pressure system. Because if you can have nothing that's impeding its process, it'll be able to continue to strengthen and intensify further and further and further without any sort of impediment. But we do see, according to the models, there is a trough right here. You can see this trough that dips down, and it does curl about, creating a lot of strong wind shear and upwards of 40 knots out in front of this to the north. So this could be dealing with a bit of wind shear, especially as it heads off to the Gulf of Mexico. You can actually see in the next slide here. This is on Monday, June 14th. We got a lot of wind shear here in the Gulf of Mexico that really starts to stir up. And so if this tropical system does form, it will have to deal with some form of wind shear off to the northern sides, probably both of the northern quadrants, the northeastern and the northwestern quadrants, but the southeastern and southwestern quadrants should be spared of most of the wind shear. So you could potentially see some thunderstorm development off to the southeastern sides of it as it continues to spin on the counterclockwise portion. Probably we'll see a lack of thunderstorms in the southwestern quadrant for the most part, but a lot of thunderstorm activity expected here across at least three out of the 4 quadrants of these tropical systems. Which, what I mean by quadrants is tropical systems typically are split into 4 different sides. Northeast, which would be the top right, northwest, which is top left, southwest, which is bottom left, and southeast, which is the bottom right. And so when I mention that the northwestern, northeastern, southeastern quadrants, that's what I mean in regards to potential for some tropical activity. And then even later on in the week, when these storms, when the tropical system is actually kind of expected to form, and we'll get into that in a bit, there's even a lot stronger wind shear with this. And so this thing might actually deepen and race off closer towards the U.S. If a tropical system does form, we might be seeing a tropical system that will be moving exceptionally fast, not super fast like severe weather fast, but it'll be moving exceptionally fast off to the north and east, and you could potentially see a little bit stronger of a tropical system. Typically, when tropical systems deepen, what I mean by that, by deepening, is it gets forced by this trough to actually move. It's like it's giving it a little shove, more or less. And so with that shove, obviously, actually, it's similar to just getting shoved in real life. If you get shoved, you move typically a little bit faster. And that's exactly what this tropical system does. If it deepens, it typically moves a little bit faster, and it rides along that trough that'll be basically protruding it through the southern portions of the United States. So we'll have to continue to watch that. But from a wind shear perspective, definitely has a lot to overcome on the northern side. But if it does have an opportunity to form a tropical system where there isn't really a whole lot of wind shear, then you could be good to go from that aspect there. Now, from a moisture perspective, we're going to be looking at the dry air here. And as of right now, there isn't a lot of dry air across portions of Mexico. There is a little bit of dry air across portions of the Greater Antilles, even into the Caribbean. But on Friday, here today, not as much. Heading off into Monday, however, there is a little bit of dry air that starts to seep in. Not too much. Typically, when you start to get into the reds, yellows, and oranges, even into the whites in some spots, that's when it gets really dry. But there is some dry air that's starting to protrude itself here on Monday. But then, even according to this model here, it's not supposed to be wind shear. It's supposed to be dry air. There you go. You have the dry air. According to this model, you even have a tropical system that starts to form. You can see this counterclockwise spin right here. And so, excuse me, by the mid to latter stages of this week, you could potentially even see something that'll form regardless of the dry air out in front of it here in the Gulf of Mexico. But it will have to combat that as well, and we'll have to see if that will hinder tropical development as well, because typically you want things to be warm and moist for tropical systems to either form or sustain. So if we take a look at the simulated reflectivity here, the simulated radar from the GFS, you can see the GFS actually says that it has a potential low pressure system that'll form off of this and even could move off towards Mexico as its own little tropical system, maybe a tropical depression of some sorts. But as of right now, not expected to be all too, intense as a tropical system. But then once you head into Monday and even Tuesday, a lot of moisture really starts to consolidate across portions of the Gulf of Mexico. And one thing that I do want to make clear here for most people is that there is this trough that's moving about. I actually backed it up a little bit, but there's this trough that's moving on through that entered into the Atlantic. And usually with lingering troughs and stationary boundaries, you could potentially get a tropical system to form off of that. So what I mean by that here is on Tuesday, you not only have a lot of moisture here in the Gulf from that trough that brought some rain, brought some warm, moist air to rise within this general vicinity, as well as the former tropical system that will still have some sort of moisture with it here heading from the Pacific into the Atlantic. You do have the potential for something to form off of that stationary boundary. And according to this model, you potentially could have a low pressure system that could form off of the lingering portions of that stationary boundary. So portions of Florida, portions of Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, even Louisiana potentially. You guys have the potential of seeing something tropical that could form off of that stationary boundary. And even the Carolinas, you guys have the potential for something to form. And you can see that even races off the coast, and that even deepens and heads off to the north and east. Not exactly all too much of a threat for Bermuda as that continues to head on through. That'll seem to kind of split the gap more or less, but the potential for something tropical is possible off of that stationary boundary. And we're going to have to keep in mind that tropical system as well as we continue to get closer and closer to the beginning of next week. But another thing that we have to keep in mind about is look at this moisture right here. Look at how much thunderstorm activity is starting to really consolidate here. And you can even see already, boom, there's already a lot of rain with this system, even a potential tropical system that will head towards the Gulf Coast here. And you can even see that this, according to the model, already has the signature of a low pressure system, which could potentially be tropical. And so you can see as that races off, there is, as it races off, it will continue to, strengthen and then weaken as it gets over land. But the interesting thing about this is that was basically one model run. So that one, fortunately, and we hope that it stays that way, stays as weak as it was. That was a relatively weak tropical system, probably a tropical storm more or less, that went off towards Louisiana and Mississippi. But there was a couple other instances. This was actually the previous run that occurred 6 hours prior. This actually said that a hurricane was going to head off and about into places like Texas and even Louisiana. And so we're definitely going to have to continue to watch out for these models because they do change. All right, they're not everything is set in stone for the models whenever I show you all. And so, we obviously hope that tropical systems don't impact the United States. We would like to prevent impacts to life and property. But, if things do change, things do turn for the worse, we are going to want to prepare accordingly in these instances. Now, with tropical systems, they typically create a lot of vorticity here. And we've been showing a lot of the GFS as of late, but just for instance, this was the latest model run. You can see with that tropical system that heads off to the coast, you have a lot of vorticity here. A lot of this this yellow, orange, reds, even pinks shows a lot of cyclone vorticity. And the more cyclone vorticity you have, the higher chance or probability you have of getting a tropical system. And so what I want to show you all right here is not the GFS, but actually the Euro model. The Euro model doesn't have simulated reflectivity, or at least not as good of simulated reflectivity to the point where we can't actually see specifics compared to the GFS. But the Euro here is also picking up on some vorticity within this general vicinity right here. So definitely something to watch out for as this continues to move about. Especially as this also heads off to the north. You can even see, according to the Euro, this gets a lot more better organized. You can see these little bands off of it. And so really something to watch out for, especially places along Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, even Florida. That just general area there in the Gulf of Mexico definitely could see the potential impact of a tropical system. If people were to ask me as to where this thing were to specifically go, we can't tell you that as of right now due to the fact that this is relatively far out. But we do want to warn people ahead of time that there is the potential for a tropical system to move on through and potentially create impacts. Now, I do want to talk about one thing here real quickly, and that is we will most likely be doing live coverage of this if this does form into a high-end tropical storm. Or even a hurricane. If it is a hurricane, we will definitely do live analysis whenever it does make landfall. So just to give you all a little bit of a hint as to what all you could be anticipating, we do have a plethora of stuff to show off for you all. We have cameras at beaches. We have different places to where we can see conditions such as wind speeds, temperatures, and all sorts of stuff. We also have satellite and a way to show you all what the hurricane hunters are actually experiencing when they go into tropical systems. And for most of you who may not know what hurricane hunters are, they basically are people who go into planes and they drop these little probes into the tropical system to actually tell us how intense the tropical system actually is. And so we have a way to actually track their position as well as their current their current conditions as to what they are experiencing with wind, temperatures. Even we can track their probes and stuff like that. And so if you can imagine with satellite and how tropical systems typically look like, looking like this and stuff. It's a terrible drawing of a tropical system, but you get what I mean. And how the hurricane hunters are flying through the tropical systems and all, we'll be able to have all that coverage for you as to what they are experiencing live updates as to how intense the tropical system would be, even live pictures of the places that are going to be impacted. And so if you guys would like to stay tuned to the channel, as I said, please be sure to subscribe, turn on notifications, because we do live analysis on tropical systems, even severe systems, whenever they do get bad. And we do upload videos mostly every morning. I'm trying to get back into the thick of things because I have been inactive on this channel, but we do have the potential for those tropical systems. And so I would just highly advise you all to really watch out for this as this continues to move on through. So thank you guys so much for watching. If you guys did like the channel, please be sure to leave a like. If you like the video, please be sure to leave a like. Subscribe if you're new, turn on notifications, share this with friends and family on social media. Also follow me on social medias and join my Discord server. Links to all that will be in the description down below. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me there or even on Twitter, but I don't really look on Twitter all that much on my messages. That's more or less a place to where I just retweet stuff. But otherwise, that's going to be it for me. My name is Nate. I also go by HockeyBoy8. I'll catch you guys in the next forecast discussion, whether it's severe weather or tropical weather. Peace out, everyone.